Well, we're campaigning across the state. So today we were in Norwalk, and now we're in the Toledo area. We're going to Defiance, Ohio, a little bit later. We've been traveling the whole state really for about the last 6 months, and it's been a process of introducing myself and talking about what we think the big issues are that Ohio is facing.
Are you able to get out to Northwest Ohio a lot, or?
Yeah, actually, I have some cousins actually in the Toledo area, so I have some family out this way. So I'm not unfamiliar with it, and it's not really too bad of a drive. So probably 5 nights a week I'm back home in my home city of Lakewood, but we come out on day trips. So I've been out here pretty frequently.
You used to be the mayor of Lakewood, right?
I did. I was in local government for about 12 years. I was a city councilman for 9 years, and then I was the mayor.
So I've read a lot about you, and I know that you're really deeply ingrained in public service. I mean, it seems like you've been to a lot of areas. How do you feel is that going to help you as you're running for governor?
Well, I think anytime you take on a big job, your personal experience and your work history is an important part of that. And if you look at kind of what I've spent my life doing and what John Kasich has spent his life doing, I think it's a better background because I did come out of local government, and I also have a lot of experience in law enforcement. And my current job as a county official, we're running one of the largest kind of state, after state government, it's one of the largest government entities in Ohio, and that's been a good experience too. So I think you always want to build on what your experience is, and I think when you combine all those things, it's a good background to run the state.
Most recently, what would you call one of your biggest eye-opening learning experiences in government?
Well, we took over a very difficult situation in Cuyahoga County. It had been really pummeled by the biggest corruption scandal in the history of the county. And we'd had a lot of people that were public officials who had really let the public down because I think they had forgotten why they had gone into public service in the first place. So what I tried to do was rely on my background as both an elected official at the local level, but also my experience in law enforcement as a prosecutor and as an FBI agent, and combine those to try to reform Cuyahoga County. And that's worked out pretty well.
Now, tell me a little bit about when was the time that you said, yes, I want to run for governor? When did you say in your mind that it's an appropriate time?
Well, I can tell you when I started thinking about it. I met with Governor Kasich after he and I had been elected in the last election. He had just been elected governor. I had just been elected to run my county. And we had a meeting at the end of 2010, and it was apparent to me very quickly that his attitude towards local government and local communities was not going to be good for the state, because his perspective was that local communities were really on the gravy train, so to speak, and they needed to be cut off by the state. And my philosophy is that the state is supposed to be a partner with local communities, and that worried me, and I wondered if he was the right person for the job. And my experience in the last couple of years, I think, has shown that I know how to run a very large organization and do it effectively.
Now, one of the things I want to talk to you about, one of the big issues right now, especially in Northwest Ohio, is the turnpike and how the turnpike rates are hiking up.
They sure are.
And Governor Kasich has said that 10% of that, he's said that about 10% of, or 90% of that money is going to go back to Northwest Ohio that's racing. I mean, do you have any feelings on the turnpike in particular?
I do. I'm glad you asked that question. A couple things. One of the things is the governor said recently that the plan surrounding the turnpike is one of the most innovative in the country. Now, I really do not know what is innovative about raising everybody's tolls for the foreseeable future. There's nothing special about that. It's been done all over the country. So he's made a decision that I think, by the way, violates his no new taxes pledge, but he made a decision that he was going to raise everybody's toll rates. Now, he has said that most of that money is going to be used in Northeast Ohio, but there's a shell game that's going on there, because what he hasn't said is that we're not going to lose other money that we're supposed to get, because there's a certain amount of infrastructure money that is spent through ODOT that is collected by the gas tax, and they have refused to say that those funding levels will be kept the way they were. So look, people are not foolish about this. They understand if you're going to say, well, you're going to get 90% of this money, the first question you should ask is, well, what about the other money that we were getting anyway? And they have refused to answer that question. Because what we suspect the truth is, the infrastructure money that we were entitled to is being shifted to other parts of the state. So what that means is, all of these tolls that almost everybody watching this program is going to be stuck paying, all those tolls are going to finance in part infrastructure projects all over the state. And that's not fair because we're the ones here in Northern Ohio, those of us that live here, we're the ones paying the tolls.
Do you have any ideas of how that money can be better rerouted to?
Well, I think that's unfair taxation. So to me, if you're going to raise our tolls, which the governor is, for multiple years into the future, which he is, the beneficiary of that should be the part of the state that's paying the tolls. And again, they've refused to do that because they will not commit to keeping the existing ODOT money that we were entitled to in the first place. So if there's going to be those kinds of increases, I think this part of Ohio should be the beneficiary of them. And I would also note, his original plan that he was promoting was to privatize the turnpike entirely. We managed to defeat that part of it. We spoke out very strongly about it. Actually, I came out to the Toledo area a couple times with Congresswoman Capter and some of the Pete Gerken, the county commissioner, and we spoke out very strongly against that. I think we stopped that part of it. But what I don't want to see happen is I don't want to see lots of debt piled onto the turnpike. I don't want to see the tolls going through the roof, and I don't want to see that paying for projects in other parts of the state that aren't paying the toll.
Name some of the other issues that you think are really glaring in Ohio.
Sure. Well, this budget that just passed is really a disaster. And not just the Toledo Blade, but papers all over the state said that the governor really was off track and out of line, and so was the legislature in terms of the budget they just passed. And there's a lot of things in there, but I'll just name a few things. First of all, they raised everybody's sales taxes. So everybody's sales taxes are going up. In the long run, property taxes are going up. They're also they're changing the homestead exemption in the future for seniors. That's a big mistake as well, I think. They've already cut local government funding. That has led to the layoff of police officers and firefighters. Previously, they cut education funding. That's led to the layoff of teachers. These are just really the wrong priorities. And you need to have a budget that's built around providing services to everyday Ohioans and middle-class families. And to give some tax cuts like they did in the last budget to the people at the very highest end of the income scale, and then at the same time raising taxes on some middle-class families and poor families in Ohio, I think is exactly the wrong direction to go.
Governor Kasich has been praised by many for the amount of jobs that he's helped create, that they say, and where the job rate is going in Ohio. What's your take on that? Well,
we just need to look at what the actual numbers are. In the last 14 months or so, recent ratings just came out, recent rankings just came out, and we are behind in job creation. All of the states that border us, Indiana, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, we're behind all of them. We were ranked 47th in the country. We've had 2 months this year where we lost either the most jobs or the second most jobs in the country. And so at this rate, it's going to take us more than 20 years just to get back to where we were before the recession. So when Governor Kasich talks about, and when you say many people, it's mostly him, to be quite honest with you, because we really have not made the kind of progress that we need to. It's going to take us over 20 years to get back to where we were before the recession hit, and that's just way too slow of a growth.
So it sounds like you're saying that we've actually gone in an opposite direction.
We're not losing jobs, but we are flat. And I think in a competitive global economy, if you're standing still, you're falling behind. Because there's other parts of the country, other parts of the world that are growing much faster. And the policies that he just implemented through this budget, I think are going to make the situation worse. Look, if you're going to cut people's taxes, let's give the primary beneficiary the benefits of those tax cuts to the people that have suffered in the recession. Don't give most of the benefits to people that are in the top 1% of the income bracket. It doesn't make sense to me at all.
Would you say, though, that people who are in the top 1% of the income bracket have worked very hard to be there.
Some have
Why shouldn't they get those added benefits? Just because it worked hard?
Because we have a finite amount of money that we collect and that we tax. So if you're going to give people a break, the stock market has done very well. Some of those folks have worked hard. Some of them have inherited their money. There's all kinds of reasons why people might be wealthy. But if you're going to give people a break, why would you literally raise people's taxes? Look, here's if you had to look at a profile of a person who's going to do very poorly under this budget, it would be a person on fixed income who's a senior citizen and still owns their own home, because they're not going to get an income tax cut, but their property taxes are going to go up and their sales taxes are going to go up. So when you say, well, why shouldn't somebody in the top 1% get a benefit? Well, why are they getting a benefit while at the same time everybody else's sales taxes are going to go up? To me, it's not an equitable way to try to pay for the services that we need in the state. Doesn't make sense to me. A couple things. So in my county, we've created one of the largest economic development funds and job creation funds in the state. It's actually the largest in the state after state government itself. And we've worked with a lot of local businesses, so small and medium-sized businesses, where we say we will provide some assistance to you if you expand your payroll, put more people on the payroll, and pay them a living wage with benefits, and then we will help with that situation. The state's done a little bit of that, but I think the state has been kind of lost their focus in terms of actually creating jobs. So we've done that quite a bit in our county. But that's not the whole solution. There's other parts of it. Part of it is education. One of the things that we just started in my county, every single child that starts kindergarten in my county starting this fall will have a college savings account set up in their name. We're the first county in the country to do that, because there's definitely a link between education policy and economic development. You have to make sure that people have the skills to get the jobs that are going to be created in the 21st century.
How would that work, creating a fund like that?
Basically, what we did was we worked with every single public school system. We also worked with the Catholic diocese schools in the Catholic diocese and private schools. And we do it through a local financial institution, Key Bank. And we set up we get the information for the students. We put a very small deposit into the account, and we notify the parents when they sign their child up for school that this account is there for them. It can only be used for educational expenses. So it isn't just a fund that they can tap into for any purpose. But after they graduate from high school, it can be used for either vocational education or 2-year or 4-year college. If they don't use the fund, after a certain period of time, after a number of years, they will waive it and it will go back into the pool. These kinds of funds have been used across the country. No part of the country has done it as much as my county has, so we're proud of that. And what it does is, that I think is so important, is it lets a child know very early in their life that they have great potential, that they have the potential to go to college someday. And even if they don't go to college, what's important is that they know that high school diploma is probably not going to be enough in the modern economy. They have to have some kind of a strategy to become a productive working member of society.
That's what I was going to ask, because if not every kid is necessarily fit to go to college or wants to go to college, so
right.
It seems like this fund, you could use it even if you don't go to college for
That's right.
the purpose of some kind of higher
So here's what,
education.
yeah, right, because here's what the data shows. The data shows that if you get out of high school, or God forbid, drop out of high school, and you don't have any other education, the chances of you really making it into the middle class, at least the middle class, are pretty slim. Every time you increase your educational level, your income level tends to track that. So it doesn't have to be a 4-year degree. Less than 30% of folks in Ohio end up getting a 4-year degree, and that's about what the national average is. But if you look at states that are really doing well, a lot of times it's because they have a higher percentage of people that are at least getting a 2-year degree. And so this is going to be a bridge, I think, to enable people to at least get some type of post-high school education. Now, it could be a 4-year degree, it could be a 2-year degree, it could also be vocational training. It could be learning to be an electrician or a plumber or some kind of skilled trade. But you want to make sure that you're not throwing people out there onto the job market without any real marketable skills. That's what's important, I think.
Now I'm going to transition quite abruptly here, but
okay.
I only have a few more questions for you. But there's been a lot in the news about your stance on abortion and Governor Kasich's, and it seems like they're really dueling.
Well, here's what the governor did that I thought was a big mistake, and I think not just in Ohio but across the country there was a lot of outrage about it. They put restrictions into the state budget. There was no discussion about it. There was no debate about it. They were inserted into the budget at the last minute. And it's not just the typical debate that your viewers might have heard before about abortion. So it's not just about whether somebody is pro-choice or pro-life. They actually put restrictions in there that would restrict a rape crisis counselor's ability to give advice and counsel to the women who have been victims of sexual assault and in their greatest hour of need. I thought that was completely beyond the pale and uncalled for. And the governor has refused to really make much of a comment about it, but he signed it, and he celebrated signing the bill that contained that. That's one of the most extreme provisions, not just in the history of Ohio, but in the entire United States. And I've got to tell you, I don't understand what problem that was solving. Now, when I used to be a prosecutor, I prosecuted cases of sexual assault, worked with victims of sexual assault, I worked with rape crisis counselors. To have a politician, whether it be a legislator or governor in Columbus, come up with rules and restrictions about what that rape crisis counselor is allowed to tell the woman that has been assaulted, I think it just has no place. And I think whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, that's something that most Ohio voters would be outraged if they knew that was the new law in Ohio. And so that was something I was certainly quite outspoken about.
It sounds like, you know, where you're coming from on this, it steps over a lot of lines, not just maybe someone, you know, for religion, for religious purposes or for political purposes. It seems like it steps on a lot of lines.
It does, because look, and we've seen that happen in the last election cycle. There were certain candidates across the country that, besides talking about abortion, were talking about rape and incest and what they thought the way that a victim of rape or incest should be treated. And that, to me, again, people can agree and disagree about what their personal moral view is about abortion based on their religion or their moral values. But having a politician come up with what the restrictions should be between a woman and a rape crisis counselor, that to me takes it to a completely different level that again, I think if most Ohioans knew that had passed, they would be outraged. Certainly we have heard, I can tell you, since that bill was passed and signed into law, we've heard from literally thousands and thousands and thousands of women and men in Ohio that are angry about it and would like to see it reversed, and it should be.
I'm just going to finish up here with
Sure.
a couple general questions. For your campaign, where do you go from here in the next few months? And what's the plan?
Literally, we're going to Tip City, but you're going to see us traveling around the state quite a bit. We are going to be pretty aggressive about getting around the rest of the state. So you're going to see more of that as time goes on. So throughout the late summer and into the fall, we're going to be going around the state. And part of it is listening, because candidates shouldn't do all the talking. They should also do some of the listening and find out what people are concerned about. And we have already heard a lot of that in the last 6 months, but we're going to continue to do that. And so we want to hear, you know, how can state government help the Toledo area? What parts of Toledo's economy could be bolstered by state policies? So we're going to come specifically to the Toledo area and have meetings with local elected officials, local business owners, local labor people, and say what's gone wrong in the last couple years and what can go right in the next 4 years after the election. So you'll see us out here quite a bit, you know, campaigning, but also having a dialogue with people. I think that's the way a campaign should work.
And that was kind of my last question. What is it about your campaign that you want the voters to notice about you personally?
Sure. Well, I mean, part of it is what my background is and what I bring to it in terms of a background both in law enforcement and local government, making government work. But also there's a real clear difference between Governor Kasich and myself. My policies and my whole career has really been about trying to stand up for ordinary people, make government work for the average person. And I think Governor Kasich's record has been pretty much the opposite of that. And I think what we've seen even the last few weeks coming out of Columbus demonstrates that. So I think we're going to have a real clear contrast between a campaign that's really based on trying to help the common person in Ohio and what the governor's record has been, which I think is in contradiction to that. And I'll look forward to also getting ideas from people, including all over the Toledo area, about what we can do to really bring Toledo back as strong as it can.